welcome to the Love How Deep podcast with Brian and Heather Mayer. Our purpose is to equip married couples like you with resources that rely on the transformative power of God's Word to strengthen your relationship. Hey everyone, welcome back to Love How Deep podcast. We're so happy that you're choosing to listen to this again today. And as always, we are praying that you hear a little nugget or a little something that you can take away with you and apply to your own married life. And so, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
We are talking today about life transitions, meaning relocations as a married couple,
Yeah.
because that's not an easy thing to do.
hmm That's
Like,
right. And I think it's kind of cool that we're doing this episode the way we're doing it because this is the first time you and I have ever done an episode where we are not in the same room with each other. And so, speaking of relocating and moving and being in a different location, I think it's kind of appropriate that this is how we are doing the episode today. And it is all about just trying to find time in our day to do a podcast. And we found that this is the best way. I'm at my office, you were at home. And so I think this is working just fine.
right. Just like I was saying earlier, it's finding those little pockets of time to do things that need to be done and that we want to do. So this is what we found. This is cool.
Yeah, very
So
cool.
this is one time when I feel like technology is amazing.
Right. That's right.
I
Yeah.
don't
And
always
you
have that opinion.
now, and you being a teacher, you have some horror stories about having to be
Mm,
online and it was just not an easy time there when COVID was in full
no,
bloom. So,
no, that was, ugh,
yeah.
we won't go there. So
Right.
back to transitioning, or
Okay.
sorry, I keep saying transitioning. I mean relocating.
Yeah.
Relocating, moving from one place to another. Like we're not really talking. I mean, this could absolutely apply if you're moving from one part of the city to the next city, but we're talking like major relocations, like, you know, a job change or uh something drastic in the family where you need to go and live closer to family or whatever, that kind of relocation where it's literally going to affect your whole
Right.
family in every aspect.
Yeah.
And me, for me, like I've relocated every few years my entire life, with the exception of the last 15 years we've been in Virginia and then 10 years in Florida prior to that. But beyond that, I was moving every couple of years to a new city and starting my life all over again as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, as an old adult. This is something that I had to do a lot of. Brian,
hmm
what about you?
Yeah. I mean, we relocated. Well, I shouldn't use the word relocating. We moved around a lot, but it was always within the same little town. So I can't really say that it was relocation per se. In fact, I lived probably within a 7 mile radius the first 30 years of my life.
Wow, I
And
cannot
then
fathom that.
Yeah. So I don't have as much of an experience with it, although we do have one big move that we made together as a married couple. And I'm sure as we talk along in this episode, we'll probably have some stories to tell about that whole experience through what we're going to share today. So,
Right.
yeah. So why don't we get started? And again, we've got five kind of tips or areas that we wanted to go through and talk a little bit about when it comes to relocating. And I'd say the first one is, obviously employment. It would be nice if you relocated and you both had employment all lined up, but a lot of times
In
that's
a
not the
perfect
case.
world, that would
Yes.
be so nice. Yes.
Right. And that's obviously not the case most of the time. It was not the case for us
No.
when we relocated. We relocated because the company that I worked for was actually moving and shifting some things around. And so it was an opportunity for us to move. But in doing so, it meant that you did not have anything lined up. And so that was
Right.
obviously not an easy thing to have to navigate. But,
Right. It not only left me feeling like I'm not bringing anything to the table, work wise, and struggling with just finding a teaching job in the midst of, schools cutting down staff or whatever, but it also affected where we looked for housing. and
Mm-hmm.
how much we had to spend on our house.
That's true.
And did
It
we get
did.
everything that we wanted? Did we get that garage that we so
Mm-hmm.
desired? We did not. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, things like that really affect like what's going to happen for you, you know?
Right.
So, having that
Yeah.
job is important.
Yeah. And that was 15 years ago for us. And I mean, looking back on it, some ways I'm kind of glad maybe we lived a little bit under our means and only budgeted based upon my income because now we're in a better position for it. Maybe it was a little bit of a sacrifice before not
Yeah,
purchasing a home. Maybe it was a little bit more expensive, but and then another cool thing that we ended up doing, we actually ended up flying up here before we moved because you had to take some licensing tests to be a
I
teacher in this
did.
state in Virginia as opposed to being in Florida. So that was an interesting little weekend we had to zip up here and do that. And
It was.
yeah, it
But
was
those are
some.
things to think about. Like
Hmm.
what do you have to do in order for both of you to have a job and,
Yeah.
you know, and I think having good conversations about that is just it's so necessary because what if only one of you has a job? What if
Hmm.
both of you are moving for some specific reason, maybe to be closer to family? You've got an aging parent or something, and no one has a job. What
Hmm.
then? What does that look like for you? What
Hmm.
sacrifices will need to be made? All good things to talk about and think
Right.
about.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah, and there's just, real quick, just some practical things that you can do. You can help your spouse with a job search. You can help with resume writing or helping them connect with people. But then also there's the emotional support side of things. I know when you came up here to take those licensing courses or those tests, I came with you. And
yeah,
you could have come by yourself, but it was like, I wanted to come up here. I wanted to scope out some things, but at the same time, wanted to just be with you to have you not have to worry about anything else besides doing well on those tests. So those
yeah,
are
I
just some
remember that.
examples of things that we
Yeah,
did. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. I
yeah.
like that. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. What
So
else
yeah,
you got?
keep that in mind about the jobs for both of you and you know, kind of play that what if game so that you know what kind of are prepared for what things could look like.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing to really think about, if you have children, you want to think about schools in the area. You
Mm-hmm.
want to think about even preschools if you have little ones, um, because this affects where you buy your house too. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're house hunting, look at those schools. Do they have overall good scores? Are they in the locations that you are comfortable with your family
Mm-hmm.
growing up? Um, so there's a lot there. And I remember, um, Brian, when we were looking to relocate, you and our daughter like laid a map of Richmond out on the floor and started like kind of blocking off where these school zones were. And we already knew a little bit about areas that we wanted to live in and what schools would those be. And so something like that, that just kind of actively engages your child in that process too, to kind of help them get excited about a move. It's hard for children to move. It is hard for adults. Well, guess what? It's even harder for children because their friend group is starting all over again. And so to engage them in that kind of way, and then schools, of course, have websites. They might even have Facebook pages and things like that. You want to engage with all of that. Look at it, dig into it, talk to, if you know anyone in the area, talk to them about it. Talk to your realtor about different school zones and things like that. Um, and then as far as preschools, if you have little ones, same thing applies. They have websites and maybe a Facebook page. And, you know, Brian, you said that when you were looking for a school for Kendra, when you moved from Cincinnati to Florida, you made a phone call to a preschool that could keep her during the summer. And it was the lady on the phone, Miss Sue, that you talked to, and she made you feel so honored and special. You were like, that's where my child's going to school.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't
Yeah.
even think there were websites at that point. So,
Right. It's
but
all
it's
about the
just
human connection, even
it's the
if it was
human
over the phone.
connection. Yeah. So
Right.
if you just, you know, make some phone calls and talk with someone, write down your list of questions and ask someone. If you're
Mm-hmm.
moving during the summer, there's still someone at that public school or private school that you could talk to and ask your questions to.
Mm-hmm.
And find out as much as you can, you know, and if your kids are involved in extracurricular activities, what do those schools offer?
Mm-hmm.
You know, have that discussion of a private school versus a public school. Get the the cost differences there,
Mm.
and have
Yeah.
that conversation with your spouse. This is
Yeah.
so important.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I would say another quick thing with that, that I remember is that Richmond, Virginia had a magazine, and I think most cities have magazines
Yeah.
that you can subscribe to. I would highly recommend that you subscribe to the magazine. You can learn a lot about the city. I remember there was always articles in there about the schools and about the test scores, that you can look at. So I would imagine most probably medium-sized to large-sized cities probably have that. So that would be something that could be helpful, especially when you're thinking about school for your children.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, as a teacher myself, I will tell all of you, do your homework and
Hmm.
learn as much as you can about the schools and preschools in the area and what you might envision or hope for your child.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is the budget. There is money involved typically when you move, and unfortunately, it's a
a
lot of
lot.
times it's not really one of those expenses that you're ready for. It can kind of sneak up on you if you're not careful. So, we would recommend obviously getting a gauge for moving expenses. If you move yourself and you rent a truck and you pack up yourself, that's going to be a lower cost than actually hiring somebody. But depending on the size of your home, the amount of children, that kind of thing. That's something you have to think about.
Yep.
Um,
Is it a
yeah,
cross country move? Are you going to have to,
right.
square away some hotels for a few evenings and food for
Hmm.
the road, all those kinds of things? They just kind of sneak up on you, but it's
Hmm.
all about the planning and things like
Right.
that for moving
Yeah.
expenses.
Yeah. And then cost of living in the new area. There's again websites you can go. Probably if you just do an internet search for cost of living comparison and you type in your current city and your new city, it'll kind of give you an understanding of, okay, is my cost of living going down? Is it going up? And then that also could probably help you in negotiating potential salary. If again, one of you is, moving to a new job, or if you're relocating, you may be able to talk to your current company to say, hey, the
Hmm.
cost of living here looks like it's 10% greater. Um, can I have a 10% raise? I mean, those are things to think about.
Absolutely.
Um, Renting versus purchasing a home. If you're not sure about this new place, you don't know much about it, you feel like we don't know about purchasing a home just yet. You want to kind of feel things out. Like I did that actually when I moved from Ohio to Florida. I had never moved in my entire life, like we were just talking about. It was my first real, relocation, I should say, to another state. So I was a little bit scared. So I just rented an apartment. My goal was to just do it for a year. I ended up doing it for 2 years, but I think it was okay because it really gave me the opportunity to kind of get the lay of the land, get comfortable, know, is this the place I want to be at? Because if I would have purchased a home, then all of a sudden now I'm locked in and can't go back if I wanted to go back. So
Right.
I think you've probably had situations like that growing up where I'm sure your parents rented because they weren't sure how long they might be somewhere.
Every time we moved, we rented first. My
Yeah.
parents got the lay of the land, and then we would buy a house. And it would give them
Hmm.
more time to buy the house that they wanted. And so, yeah, that's what they did every time. So,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea too.
Yeah.
But something else to think about if you are in a place where you're like, no, we're just going to go ahead and buy, or even if you're renting, really, a real estate agent with technology these days.
Hmm.
We have some friends that are real estate agents. They will sell properties basically sight unseen, not
Hmm.
truly sight unseen. They've seen pictures and they've done FaceTime walkthroughs with the real estate agents and the buyers. And so they see it that way, but they've never physically entered the home before. So with technology the way that it is today, that is an option. If your real estate agent will do things like that for you, to find someone that's already in the new location that can um, help that get that I get what am I trying to say? Get that ball rolling on a
Hmm.
home, whether it's buying or renting. Find someone that will
Right.
walk you through that process
Yep.
uh,
That's right.
from
And that's
from
what we
far
did.
apart.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Moving from
Yeah,
Florida to Virginia, that's what
yeah.
we did. And I think another thing that gave us some comfort was because my job was relocating me, I had a lot of other coworkers that were also moving here. And so we were able to converse and have some conversations about the best areas to live in. So that was helpful
Yes.
too. Not that
Yes.
everyone can have that, but yeah. And then of course, probably goes without saying, it's pretty obvious, but just make sure that you are saving before you are moving, because again, there's going to be some expenses that come up and maybe some things that you're not really thinking about, that you're going to have to navigate. And just like you said, Heather, talking to a real estate agent, I'm sure the real estate agent could probably give you a good idea of, oh, here's some things maybe you didn't think about that, you might have to put some money down on. I know that when I moved from Ohio to Florida, there was some sort of initial car registration fee that was a little bit more expensive than just your yearly fee that was incurred kind of immediately that I didn't know about. So things like that would be helpful to know about, just so you can squirrel away some money and
Yep.
just have that financial safety net, so to speak.
Yep. Very good. Very good points.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So,
And
yep.
yeah.
And now
So,
I want to talk about another tip, and that's to jump into church.
hmm
Find a church that you can be a part of. So again, with that, do your homework before you even move. Like Brian, I remember when we were moving from Florida to Virginia, you got online, just started Googling churches in the area, and started just poring over their websites and finding videos and online services and watching them and just learning about like what is the church's mission. So
hmm
do that ahead of time instead of waiting until you're here. And then as soon as you get here, you can start that visiting process, because that is a process to visit a church once or twice. Is this the one where you feel most at home? Go check out another one. What is it that you're looking for?
hmm
So you don't want to wait too long, because then you get stuck in this rut of like kind of getting used to not going to church. So we
hmm
don't want that for you,
It's
because
very true.
God needs to be, um, you know, the most important thing in your life. So we
Right.
don't want you to forget about that.
Yep.
Yep.
That's right. I was just going to say, I'll never forget when we were looking online at churches. I don't know if you remember this, but I found one and shared it with you, and we were looking at it and looking at the video. We checked out a couple videos, and then looked at service times, and we're like, oh, this is really good. And then we got our hearts set on it kind of, and then somehow I looked and said, oh, it's 2 hours away. And I had typed in originally like churches near us and our address, and somehow this church
Yeah.
2 hours away popped up. I don't know how that happened, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Pay attention to those details, I guess. And something else you want to pay attention to is what does the church offer for youth group or children's ministry?
hmm Oh yeah.
And that's so important, because you want to get your kids connected as well, with, so, because they're making new friends. And what is their youth pastor like, or children's pastor like? What do they offer for Sunday school, and or even other activities? What's going on, I know that when we were looking for a church, we visited one in particular and talked to the pastor, and we were asking about the youth group because our daughter was a teenager, and he said, well, they meet sometimes in so and so's basement. And I was like, oh, okay. Don't know that that's what we're looking for. Like, it just sounded like a very kind of like pushed off to the side, forgotten about sort of
hmm
midweek activity for the youth to do or whatever. And so maybe not, I
Yeah.
don't know. It just
Right.
didn't sit right with us for
hmm
whatever reason. That may sit fine with you, but
Yeah.
it didn't sit right with us. So it was like,
True.
this may not be the church for us.
Right.
So, when you go visit, talk to people around you that to find out more about the children's ministry and the youth ministry once you go. Of course,
hmm
research that ahead of time on their website, but then once you go visit, talk to people and learn more about it. See if you can meet those pastors and things like that. But yeah, just get your family connected. And then, Brian and I have always been volunteers in our church. And so we firmly believe that for a church to feel like your church home, you become part of it in a sense that you're volunteering, you're helping,
hmm
you're working, you're in some sort of a ministry, whatever it is, whether you're standing at the door greeting someone, or if you're an usher, or if you're working in the nursery. It doesn't matter.
hmm
Make the church your home by diving in. So that's another
Right.
tip for you right there.
Yeah, I have some experience on both ends. One, relocating and diving into church, and then a situation when I was single moving from Ohio to Florida and not diving into a church when I got down to Florida and just thought, well, I'll get to it at some point, and then kind of rolled around checking out a couple churches, had a coworker invite me to one, and I didn't do a real good job of connecting, just sort of sat in the pew and listened for 3 or 4 weeks and then ended up drifting kind of away from it. So, yeah, it's
Yeah,
very, like you just said, it's very easy for that to happen if you're not careful. So it's
right.
best if you can just transition pretty quickly. Because if you start making the excuse of, well, we've got a lot going on, we've got a lot of boxes to unpack, and the
Those boxes will be there tomorrow.
right, the first, yeah. And so if you say, yeah, we're not going to go for a month or two, yeah, that month or two will turn into 6 months if you're not careful.
It's true. And remember, you're setting that godly example for your children. And so if
Mm.
they see you kind of setting that aside, then that's what they see.
Yep,
And
that's
you lead
right.
by example. So just
Hmm.
think about those things,
Yep,
and about, yeah, jumping
right.
into church.
Yep. And we're going to end with I think this is a very important tip, and it's all about emotions. I mean, we've talked a lot about some practical things to think about, but there's always that hidden side, so to speak,
Yeah.
that side that's not as easy to see, and it's all about our emotions. And, you know, I guess it would be important to know, when you are relocating, does one of you struggle with change a little bit more or moving around? Like for you and I mean, it had gotten to the point where you had been doing it your whole life and I had already done it once, so I was pretty good with it. But I think if for some reason I had met you in my hometown after you had moved all over the place, then most likely I would have been resistant or a little bit fearful about moving, um,
Yeah.
and would have needed some support probably, because there is a fear of the unknown and kind of feel like, there's
That is huge.
a lot of your life you're starting over, you know?
It's
I
huge.
mean,
It's
yeah.
so hard to start your life over again. I mean, I speak from experience. Every time we had to move for my dad's job, like I just remember that turmoil that I felt over it. Like it was a good thing because it was for my dad's job, but it was every couple of years, starting a new
Hmm.
school, moving into a new neighborhood, making friends, and me being as shy as I was, I absolutely hated it. I really
Hmm.
did. And I didn't move as much as an adult, but I did several times. So yeah, I mean, your emotions, like even if you're cool with moving and starting over, there's your spouse may not be. And
Hmm.
so thinking about your own emotions and dealing with those and how you feel about doing this, and the fears that you may have, and the insecurities that you may feel about it, you're I want you to also think about your spouse. How are they feeling about it? Don't just assume that they're all good because we're all in this together. Don't assume that.
Hmm.
Just do those kind of like temperature check-ins, with
Right.
how are you feeling about it? You feeling
Hmm.
okay? Because you might find me balled up in a corner crying over the fact that I'm leaving my best friend behind, and,
Right.
and I might need a shoulder to cry on.
Yeah.
And
Which
rather
kind of
than
is what
someone saying,
happened.
dude, get over it, you'll make new friends. No,
Right.
that's so cold-hearted.
Yeah, right. So yeah, so what you're saying is communicate openly. And then also I think it would be important to communicate about the goals that you have for the move. Like if it's a move to help an aging parent, until they get settled into a, assisted living facility or something. I mean, maybe you've got a goal of being there for 2 years or something. Or, again, if or maybe it's a job that is relocating you, but you know that this company is going to relocate you again in 5 years. Well, talk about that, because your move might look a lot different than if you say, you know what, no, I want this to be our forever city, our forever home, things like that. So
Good
just again,
points. Good
open,
points.
yeah, open dialogue. And again, just
Hmm.
asking your spouse how you can help them emotionally. I think that's kind of been the thread of what we've been talking here,
Absolutely.
about
Yeah.
how we might be able to help. Um, and I think you
Yeah.
talked a little bit about leaving friends, leaving family behind. That was difficult for us, wasn't it? Leaving
It
your
was. It
family.
really
I mean, I
was.
left my family in Ohio, but then we moved from Florida. You had to leave your family, and that was a hard
I did.
discussion.
That was really hard. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it still is. I still don't like the fact that our families live so far away from us.
Yeah.
We're going to build the mayor compound.
Right.
Just everyone's going to have a place to live.
I know. Right. Right. Yep.
Yeah. But you just maybe even before you leave, maybe you already bake some plans in the future of how you're going to stay connected or when you're going to go back and visit. So it's
Hmm.
like, say you're moving in July, you know what? We're going to be back for Christmas. We will see you in 5, 6 months. We will see you again and
Hmm.
make those plans, and so that everybody
Yep.
kind of has something to look forward to.
Hmm.
Kids always have like to have things to look forward to, right? Like, oh, we're going to Disney, we're going to, the water park, we're going to the beach, like whatever. As adults, sometimes we need those things too. That little like it's almost like another goal. Like you
Hmm.
talked about the goals of moving. Well, maybe you need that goal to look forward to, that it's only going to be 5 months and we're going to talk on the phone all the time or whatever. We're going to FaceTime or Zoom with each other. Make plans like that so that you can stay connected. That's
Hmm.
so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. And then, again, make sure you're patient with each other. This is a process. Moving
Yeah.
is a process. I know for you and I remember back when we were making the decision to move from Florida to Virginia, it was kind of nice because my company did give us some time to really think about it. I don't know, was it like a year, year and a half? I
They
felt like when they
did.
first announced it, and I remember when you and I were first presented with the idea, we said, "No, I think we're
No,
good. We'll figure it out down here." Which meant I had to find a new job either with the company. They weren't relocating the entire company, but or I had to find a job with another company. But I think for you and I, it takes us a while to kind of warm up to ideas, to change. For some people, that's not the case. You can make a decision pretty quickly.
it's
But for
called
you,
processing.
right,
And sometimes we just take a little more time than the rest of the world to
right,
process through something and think through the
right.
pros and the cons and
Yeah,
what do we want and what would the goals be.
right. I think you and I are like an oven when it comes to change. We have to hit the preheat button, and then it takes a
Yeah.
while to warm up.
Yeah.
We're
Not
not
a
like
crock pot.
microwaves when it comes
Right.
to,
Well, I
yeah,
said not a crock pot. No, not an Instapot.
right. There
Not
you
an Instapot.
go.
Not a microwave.
Right.
We
Yep.
just take time.
Yep. And
Yeah.
then probably the last thing that's extremely important is what? You got this one?
You want to pray for and with each other. If
Yes.
especially if
Yes.
you know your spouse is really, really struggling with this or your children are struggling with it, pray for them. When you're doing your own quiet time, pray for them, pray for their emotions. And then when if you see one of them, someone in your family kind of saddened and broken down or even angry about this move, just say, encourage them and then pray with them right then and there that they can trust in God. The just digging into God's word and praying with your family, doing this individually or as a family can help you when you're struggling emotionally with this. Psalm 119, 105 says, "Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." And so this is a new path that you're taking and you want God's guidance throughout all of that. And so that's going to take you diving into what his word says, what he's saying to you about all of this.
Hmm.
What does God say about fears or anxiety about change and experiencing something new? Find out what that
Hmm.
says, read it together as a family and just, kind of bind each other up,
Hmm.
emotionally.
Yep.
And another verse I want to leave with you, Isaiah 43, 18 and 19. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. And that verse, like it just stands in our lives. It stands for so many things. And so for this podcast episode in particular, forget the former things. Now, that does not mean forget about your friends and your family that you left behind. Forget about all those cool connections that you had and things that you did. It's not saying that, but it's saying don't stay stuck there. Like, oh, I wish I could always have what I had before. Because it says, later, that would be dwelling on it. And it says, God's word says, I'm doing a new thing and it springs up now.
Hmm.
So look forward to that future of like, what is the change that God is doing? What is He changing inside of you, inside your heart? What change is He doing for your family, for your spouse, for your new jobs, your new place to live? Like, whatever it is, He's doing a new thing in you and embrace that.
Hmm.
Accept it and say, God, thank you for this. Because, if you embrace these things and you're reaching out to God as he's doing these changes in you, it's going to do nothing but make you stronger
Hmm.
as a person and stronger as a family.
Yep. That's good. Amen to that. And it kind of reminds me of that saying, what is it? Don't cry because it's over, but smile because it happened.
Yeah, that's
And
so
that's
good.
kind of what this is all about. And don't beat yourself up if if you move away and you have a little period of sadness or depression. I mean, I know I did when we moved from Florida to Virginia. It may happen. You're human, but that's okay. Just stick with it, keep with it, and eventually you'll find yourself more comfortable in that new place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Don't disregard your feelings and your
yeah,
sadness and
right.
turmoil over it. They are your feelings. They are
Hmm.
real and God gave them to you,
That's
but
right.
work through them and
Hmm.
just,
Yeah,
looking for that peace from God and that
exactly.
direction from Him.
Yep. Well, this has been great, Heather. I've really enjoyed doing this episode this way again and being in a different location than you, but I think it worked out amazingly well. And so,
I think so. I
yeah,
like looking at your face the whole time. Usually I'm
I
sitting
know.
beside you.
Right, exactly. So, but thank you all for listening. We really do appreciate you listening and supporting us. We've got all kinds of ways that you can check out what we do. If you just go to our website, lovehowdeep.com, there's all kinds of things there, bunches of resources for you to help you connect with each other and connect better with God. And until next time, take care, and we will see you and talk to you at our next episode. Take care until then.